So welcome back to my channel. This is Dom, and today I thought I'd have a quick look through Oathmark, Battles of the Lost Age. It's a new set of rules, well, comparatively new anyway, the last couple of months, from Joseph McCulloch. He, you may know, is best known for producing the very popular Frostgrave rules. Never played them myself. So I've said many times I'm a historical gamer primarily, only just recently starting to get a little bit more into the fantasy world. And I saw these rules and I thought they looked really interesting, so I thought I'd hop along and get a set. And I've been impressed with what I've seen, and I thought I'd share with you my thoughts and some of the highlights of the rules, should we say. So let's go and have a look. So first up to say about these rules, they're produced by Osprey, or at least in conjunction with Osprey, and consequently have the wonderful artwork that you would expect. And they're not terribly expensive, so if you're one of the many of us I know collect huge amounts of rule sets, and some of which we never play. That's not us, obviously. But these are lovely books. This is a really, really nicely produced book. Hardback, you know, what have we got here? 190 odd pages, I think it's 192 pages. Beautifully illustrated with nice pictures of primarily figures from North Star, which is great. Beautifully painted and some wonderful illustrations as well within it. So beautiful book, look at that, really nicely illustrated. And it's not expensive, right? So bizarrely, if you go onto the Osprey website, this is about £25. If you go onto Amazon, you can pick it up for £17.99 or thereabouts. I'll put a link in the description and you can find it for yourselves. And I think for that price, it's well worth having a look. So let's have a quick look ourselves. So as the rules discuss, these are primarily designed for large battles. So think of your Kings of War, your Warhammer, the new Warlords game, which name escapes me completely, and it's fantasy, pure and simple. Now, some of the things will not. Some people won't like some of the rules and the way it's played out. It's very standardized. So figures, individual figures, based on 25 by 25 square bases. That's for humanoid types. Larger obviously get larger, and everything is grouped into units with a frontage of 5 figures. So if you have 20 figures, it has to be 5 across and 4 deep, and you can't do 10. It has to be 5 and the rest. So you could have 7, but that would be 5 and then 2, which actually wouldn't help you with the rules. So everything's designed to be blocks. However, casualties are taken off individually, so which I like. I do like taking off individual figures. For me, that just has something in it that is part of the fun of a game, is seeing units actually reduce in numbers rather than suddenly a whole big block taken off in one go. It uses a D10, which again will interest some people and put some people off, but it isn't the dice fest that you get with a lot of fantasy rule sets, not naming names. So here we go. We'll start with the basic premise of the game. So here's, hopefully you can see this now. This is a standard human profile character, and you've got all the major races. We'll talk about them in a minute, but you've got humans, orcs, goblins, ogres, elves, dwarves, all the races you'd expect, right? But what is so one of the things that's very, very different about this game is the fact that they aren't necessarily set in the way that they perform. So it isn't as clear-cut as good and evil, which, again, some people will love, some people will not. It's one of the things that appealed to me about these rule sets. So we'll take a look at some of the characteristics. So here's a human, which humans are, generally this sort of standardized format. So their stats are here for a typical human soldier. Activation is 5. Now to get that, each time you try and activate a human group of this particular type of humans, you would roll 2d10s. If you get 5 or above on either of them, you can activate. And we'll talk about that in a bit more. If you get less, there's still something you can do. And again, I like that. So many times with these activation setups, you fail your activation and you end up the troop just sits there doing nothing. And that frustrates me, because if you ever run a bad luck, you can suddenly find your game completely scuppered. Now, there are limitations on what you can do if you fail your activation in this, and that's good. But I think at least they can do something. Movement, 6. So that means 6 inches. Basically, is your standard move. Fighting, value of 2. Shoot value of 0 in this case, because this is a hand weapon only, but that would be a number if you had a missile weapon. Defense of 9. Combat dice of 1, so it rolls 1 dice per figure, and health of 1, so it has 1 health point. So some creatures, obviously bigger ones, have multiple health points, and therefore they can take multiple hits before they are removed. They have a point system which allows sort of balancing forces, so a human figure is worth 12 points. And any kind of special abilities. There are special things that I have, so shielded in this case, and brackets 1. I won't go into that right now. And then the base sales. Then also you've got their equipment, hand weapon, shield, and light armor. So fairly standard. So units are, as I said before, grouped. So look at that beautiful ogre picture. I mean, just stunning picture. So units are grouped, but individual troops, infantry 25 by 25, cavalry 25 by 50, larger creatures 50 by 50, and really large monsters like dragons 50 by 100. And then they are grouped into units where they are 5 across and however many deep they're required. You can see here this illustration they've got here, and this book is great. It's got lots of illustrations, lots of examples to walk you through the rules. Love that. So many rule books don't give you enough examples. So here's your unit of 12 troops here. So they'd be organised 5, 5 and 2. Now the 2 would only be there for casualties, because there are benefits in hand-to-hand of having multiple ranks, but only if they're full ranks. So you have an officer in every unit, a designated officer. Now they don't actually add to anything, but they sit right in the centre and become the focal point of all your measurements, which again is good. I think that's a good thing. So you need to have one figure that's sort of dead centre and because it's 5 across, it's obviously 2 on one side and 2 on the other, and the man in the middle is the officer. So that makes perfect sense. You have facings, as you would expect. Line of sight, won't go into a huge amount of detail, but again, they're fairly simplistic rules, but all make perfect sense, I think. Now, the turn process is interesting. So games of Oathmark are divided into terms. Each term, both players roll for initiative and then activate their units in turn and take actions with these units, such as moving, So basically it's you roll for priority. Whoever wins priority moves their first unit, and then it passes to the other player to roll their second unit and goes backwards and forwards like that. So again, it keeps the flow of the game running, which I like. And the other thing, it becomes very important how you play, which sequence you play. So priority of making sure that this unit I have to move first, but then I also need to move this unit first. How do I balance that out? And that's going to be one of the fun things, I think, with these rules. Also, if you charge your unit into an enemy unit and engage in hand-to-hand, that effectively acts as an activation for their unit. So that's another way of pinning them, if you like. So you hit them with one unit, stops them moving, stops them doing anything in their turn at all, because their initiative is gone. Look at this, dwarves. Ken will love that. So activation of units. So once it's your turn to move and you choose a unit, you roll 2d10s, and you look at the activation number. So as we said back here, let's go back to the human activation has 5. So I'd roll 2d10. If I get at least 1 5 or above, I get 2 actions for that unit. It means he can do 2 things. If I don't get any, he can only do 1 simple activation. That's basically the premise of it. Now, activations are moving, manoeuvring, shooting, and hand-to-hand. Well, I guess hand-to-hand is part of moving. So with your two, so if you successfully manage to do your two activations, or successfully manage to activate the unit and you get two activations, you can move twice. So your infantry that moves 6 inches move 12 if it wanted to, so it counts as a run, which means you could get into combat quicker. Or you could fire and then run, fire and then move, so you could fire at distance and then move 6 inches. Or you could wheel and fire, or wheel and move. So that's how it works. However, if you fail, so if you rolled the 2 dice and neither of them managed to get over the number, you can still do some simple activations, which I think is really good as well. So here you go, simple activations, which means you can still shoot, but at a minus, because you're deemed to have been not quite so well organised. You can manoeuvre or do a move action, provided you don't go into hand-to-hand contact. So you will always get one activation for a unit. You'll never be completely stymied, which I like as well. Again, look at those illustrations. I mean, this is Osprey all over, isn't it? Combat is pretty simple. It's again how a lot of fantasy rules are set up. It's alignment based. So when you charge in, you align to the opposite unit, and if everything's based roughly the same, that shouldn't make any difference at all. The process works that I'll go back to my human case here. So you always have you fight per figure in contact, and it's only the front ranks. So even though you've got multiple depth, doesn't make a difference on the initial number of dice. So you haven't got this situation which happens with some rule systems where you're rolling 100 dice. You're probably only going to be running 5 dice. So say our human unit crashes into another human unit of 5. So it'd be 5 against 5, you both get 5 dice. Now the attacking unit, or when you're attacking, you would work out what their defense is, which is 9 in this case, and your fighting ability, which is 2, and you'd remove one from the other. So that would give you a 7, which means each of those 5 dice you're requiring to roll 7 or more to cause a hit. Now that can be modified by plus you get -1 to hit if you've got multiple ranks. So say you've got your 5 humans charging into 5 humans is not actually 5, it's 20 into 5. So you've got 3 additional ranks. That would give you -3 to hit. So your 7 becomes a 4, which is quite substantial. If you're hitting somebody in the flank or the rear, you get another -1. A non-activated unit which is already activated this turn gets +1 to hit. So again, it means you get hit multiple times, you're going to get worn out, which is kind of fun. And there's various other things, disordered, elevation, all these sort of things play into it, which I really like, and I think that makes a big difference. So again, the game should flow pretty quickly. At the end of that, for every hit you've achieved, you remove a wound. Now, bear in mind our humans figures only have 1 wound, so say I caused 3 hits with my dice, that would be 3 figures removed, and you'd remove them from the back rank. And then same would apply vice versa, so the other side would roll, and you roll simultaneously. So, say one side rolled 3 hits and the other one rolled 2, obviously the one that rolls 3 would win, and then you would work out the result based on that. Obviously, if a unit has multiple wounds, then your 3. If it's a figure that's got 2 wounds and you inflict 3 hits on it, you'd kill one figure and then half and carry over the other wound on the other figures. So just that's the way it works through. And at the end of it, any unit that suffered any wounds, any casualties, must take a morale check. And at the end of that, the player that scores the most hits can, at the end of a round of combat, the player controlling the unit that scores the most hits must choose to leave the enemy unit where it is, move their own unit back by 1 inch, or push the enemy unit back by 1 inch or 6 inches. So you have that advantage that you've pushed somebody away. So again, one of the things I like about these rules is some great examples. So here you go, a round of combat, whole page here talking you through 20 human soldiers move into combat with into the front arc of a unit of 10 dwarf soldiers. So dwarves have different stats. They have a defense of 10, so still the same F, still the same fighting factor, and they still have the same number of dice. So here you go, both units have more than 5 units. Each player rolls 5 combat dice because each figure gets 1 dice. The dwarves are the non-active unit and have the special ability shielding. Therefore, both players therefore their player could choose to force both players to discard 1 dice, leaving both players with 4 dice only. However, in this case, the player decides not to use this ability. So shielding gives you that ability, and we'll talk about some of the special abilities. There's not huge numbers, but there's some interesting ones. Shielding is kind of like shield wall for those of us who do more historic kind of setup. So you hunker down. You're hiding behind your shields means you don't hit as hard, but it also means the enemy don't hit you as hard. So in this example, these 20 humans have a target number of 5. The dwarf defense is 10, -2 for the human fight ability, and -3 for their additional ranks, because obviously it's 20 figures. They've got 5 in the front and 5, 5 and 5, so they've got 3 additional ranks, which gives them -3. So they need 5s to hit. The dwarves have a target number of 6, because the human defense is 9, -2 for the dwarf fighting ability. They only get +1 rank because they were only 10 of them, so they're a 5 and a 5. Both roll their dice. The human results are 1, 3, 6, 8 and 10. These results score 4 hits because we needed 5 to hit, because also 10s give you 2 hits. So the humans got 4 hits. The dwarves rolled 2, 6, 6, 8 and 9, which also results in 4 hits. Now, because both sides have a health of 1, it means 4 figures are removed from each side. So the human unit went from 20 to 16. Still means it has 5, 5, 5 and 1. Still has an advantage over in the depth factor against the dwarves, who are now down to a 5 and a 1. So they will no longer get any kind of rank bonus. But because it was a draw, because both sides took casualties, they both take a morale check based on humans would suffer a -3 penalty, 4 for the casualties, +1 for at least 2 complete ranks. So again, that gives you confidence. The depth of the unit is good. While the dwarves suffer a -4 penalty, -4 for the casualties, but they don't have any ranks anymore because they've lost them. Because both units scored the same number of hits, both units move back by 1 inch. Very simple, and I love the fact they've got these examples. There's rules on competence against multiple units. I've just noticed there's a printing over there. Look, lost the line of words there. I'll have to contact them about that. Shooting. Ranges are pretty standard, I guess. Bow is 20, elf bow is slightly longer, 22, slings 12. No javelins, interesting. No javelin factors, which I find intriguing. I guess it'd be very simple for you to include them yourself if that's what you wanted to do. So normal thing with the shooting, you fire direct or indirect, you fire at a target. Again, same sort of basic principle. You're firing with the number of dice according to the number of figures in the front rank, which is always a maximum of 5, which can be mitigated by special abilities on the defending side, like shielding. They can hunker down and reduce the number of dice you roll, but basically you can have 5. So again, same principle as combat. You subtract the attacker's shooting stat from the target's defense stack, and then mitigate it with a number of different modifiers. You roll the number of combat dice. For each hit, you get a hit, and therefore wounds. Same basic principle. Again, any unit that suffers wounds will take a morale check. Simple as that. Again, nice example. Very clearly laid out. 20 human archers spend an action to make a shooting attack on a unit of 10 dwarf soldiers. Again, the dwarves are getting it. So the shooting factor for humans is 3. Sorry, it's 2. A player with a unit. The player with the unit human archers starts by making sure they have line of sight and range. The archers can draw a straight line from the base of their officer to the base of 3 figures in the enemy front rank. Additionally, the unit of dwarves is 16 inches away, so it's within the 20-inch maximum range of the archer's bow. Thus, the attacking unit has line of sight and range. However, the dwarves are standing behind a low hedge. This doesn't block line of sight, but does provide light cover, which becomes important when calculating the target number. Next, the player determines how many combat dice they roll by multiplying the human's archer's CD, which is the combat dice, by the number of figures in the front rank. So they've got 10 figures, which is 5 and 5. So they've got 20 figures, so it's 5, 5. They've got basically 4 ranks of figures, but only the front 5 can fire. So they get 5 dice they get 5 figures multiplied by CD of 1 is 5. So they get 5 dice. However, the dwarf soldiers have shielding, which reduces the archer's total combat dice from 5 to 4, because there's no cost in them using that shielding, because that dwarf unit has now been activated, so they might as well use it. The player then subtracts their shooting stat from the dwarf's defense stat of 10 to determine their base number, which is 8. Human archers have 4 ranks of archers, so they get an additional -3 to their target number, so the 8 goes down to 5. However, as mentioned above, the dwarves have a light cover which adds 1 to them, so it goes down to 5 because of ranks, but back up to 6 because of light cover. The player then rolls 4 combat dice, getting 3, 5, 8 and 10, which results in 2 hits. Now in this case the 10 doesn't give you 2 hits, it only gives you 1, so 2 hits in total. So the dwarves must remove 2 figures from their units, and they now must make a morale check with a -1 penalty, -2 for each casualties, but +1 since their morale test was generated by a shooting attack, so you're not so worn out by shooting attacks. And because they took 2 casualties, the dwarves can no longer claim the +1 bonus for having at least 1 complete rank. Very, very simple, and I like that. So you can play it as a standalone smash and grab kind of game, or you can play for scenarios. Look at that, brilliant. Look at those goblins, I think it's just great. There's also a number of advanced rules, I won't go into that. It's characters, as you would hope. This is fantasy after all, and they can be commanders, they can be champions, and they can fit within the unit or act separately. You've also got spellcasters. Magic, everyone likes magic, and again you will have your spellcaster will have stats depending on its nationality, or its race, nationality, and will give you a number of spells that you can have at the beginning of a game. There's also 2 broad types of spells. There's a general spell catalogue of general spells everybody has access to, and then there's some that's specific to your race. So dwarf spellcasters will have some, goblins will have another. So that's kind of fun. You can only attempt to cast 1 spell per activation, but given the fact a figure can have 2 activations, if it's successfully activated, you can fire 2 spells in a turn if you wanted to. However, you can never attempt to cast a spell if you're within 2 inches of an enemy unit. So there you go. So there's also various types of monsters, artillery, we all love those sort of things in fantasy games, right? Magic items, they're always good. So you can bolster up your characters, your units with special things. There's also the chance of random events in a game. These are all additional rules, so you don't have to play these, but this could be anything from a meteor shower to a pair of dragons decide to have a battle over the battlefield. So let's move on to the thing that I think makes these rules really special, and what attracted me to them more than anything else, and I think will be the sort of Marmite moment of some people with these rules, and that's the building of the army. So I hinted at this right at the beginning. it's not as straightforward as good versus evil. The whole premise of this game is that it's set in a fantasy world called the Marches, or Marches, sorry, not Marshes, Marches, and there's a certain degree of cooperation and cohabitation between the races. So you can, if you wish, build your army, build your empire, build a story around your empire that allows you to build certain types of troops into your armies. Now you can say, "Oh, that's a bit stupid, Dom. You could just, you pick all the best parts from each of the different races." You can't. There are certain limitations on how you build the army, which I like. So the way you do it is, and I guess this is entirely optional, you could play it just as a straight, goblins against dwarves or what have you if you wanted to, but I think you miss the nuance of the game myself. The idea is you build your kingdom, you create that in Games Workshop or Parlour, that sort of the lore around your kingdom and the history of it and why it's built. And they suggest that you build an empire based on 5 concentric sets of circles in the middle. These circles are divided into regions and territories which you can use to plot out the different types of terrain found in your kingdom, including great cities, mountains, forests, etc. It's not a map as such, but will give you a visual guide of the kingdom based on how far certain territories are from the centre of power. Now I read that and I thought, well, that's perfect because that gives you a really good basis for a campaign, right? Depending on your territories, people can invade and take them from you, which will have an impact on your army composition. So the area within the innermost circle is region 1 and contains 1 territory. Now that's your home territory. That's your the home base of your race. So if you're an orc, that will be an orc one. Simple as that. The second circle, the area between the second circle and the first circle is region 2 and contains 2 territories. Region 3, the next zone out, is 3 territories, and region 4 has 4 territories. Region 5 is the borderlands and isn't used when creating a kingdom, but comes into play in the campaign rules. There you go. When building your kingdom, you must decide whether your capital is a human, elf, dwarf, goblin, or orc city. Your choice of capital determines the race of your king and your royal family and has strong influence on the makeup of the army you assemble. Once you've chosen your capital, consult the terrain list for each of the races and decide on the terrain type for your territories in region 2. Each terrain type lists the certain figures to which therefore gives the kingdom access to when creating the army. So you can also mitigate, so there's also various rarity numbers, so that will also impact what you can choose. But in theory, and I won't go into this because anybody who buys the book will be interested in this particularly, but here you go. So if you were a dwarf kingdom and you were choosing a dwarf city, which is rarity 1, it gives you access to the dwarf king, dwarf prince, dwarf general, captains, champions, spellcaster, dwarf soldiers, dwarf spearmen, dwarf archers, and dwarf militia. Quite a lot of troops. If you go down to a mountain pass, which is rarity 2, you can get dwarf border guards and so forth. So there's also areas that have creatures that you can put into your army. However, you could also have within your territory human settlements, human areas, which would give you various options. So if there was a human plains in your territory, you get human cavalry, human heavy cavalry, which is I think that's really good. So again, you've got the different setups, different compositions, depending on the territories you've built into your kingdom, which is part of the lore, the history. So you could do, I don't know, a dwarfish mountain empire kingdom that is predominantly mountains and high points. And then maybe in the lower reaches, you've got access to, there's a big forest on the edge of the kingdom, which could be elves, for instance. So you could have elves in your army, if that's what you want to do. Then you have non-aligned terrain. So these are neutral kind of creatures. So dragons, gargoyles. And I know people say, well, what's to stop you getting 4 dragons, 5 dragons in your army? there is a limit on how many of these. You can only have a maximum of 4 of the same types of units in your army. Of course, there's a points value as well, and a dragon costs an absolute fortune, so that will limit you as well. And they suggest that sort of point sizes, you start with say 1,000 points and go up to probably 2,000 points, but you could pay any number of unit sizes. There you go, unit size. While your kingdom may grant you access to unlimited numbers of certain figures, your army can never contain more than 4 units comprised primarily of the same figure type. So you can have 4 units of human soldiers and 2 of human spearmen, but you can't have 5 of human soldiers. Maximum 4, as I said. So there you go. And here's all the stats for the different empires. There's dwarves, as you would expect. There's dwarvish line breakers. There's border guards, militia, catapults. There's the human lists. And there's a classic instance. Here you go. You've got a combined orc and human force taking on dwarves, because clearly this empire has a relationship between the humans and the orcs. Simple as that. Which I think is great. I love that idea that you can build that lore into your army. There's the human stats, there's the human troops, you can get rangers, you can get mounted rangers if you want, all dictated by the terrain that you've decided to build around your empire. There's your elves, or there's a giant first of all. There's your elfish list, beautiful figures. These are North Star figures. Elvish troops. Nice battle here between, oh crikey, looks like you've got elves coming down one way, orcs coming down the other, and in the middle is the dwarves. There's goblins and orcs here. Again, really nice stats, really nice illustrations, and lots of variety in terms of, look at that, I mean, just awesome pictures. So yeah, that's basically the rules. They're look like they're very simple to play, but fairly quick to pick up, which I like. You've got enough additional rules so you could start to learn the game with the basic rules and then move on to the additional rules. You've also got a whole campaign system built into this book, for 20 quid or less than 20 quid if you do it right. It actually gives you an awful lot of book, I think. And I really look forward to having a go at this. So I'm not much of a fantasy player, but I just think these rules look so much fun to play. There's a whole load of scenarios at the back of the book as well, if you wanted to play. Here we go. Select a scenario. You've got pitch battles, Oathmarks, bridge the river, chance encounter, wind and rain, which all gives you various setups to play the game, which again gives you that variety in the system, which I like. There's all the special abilities. I talked about shielding, but there's other things like brace, which is exactly what you expect as you're being charged. You brace against that charge. Fire breath. You've got various other things here. Stone gaze, all sorts of various things. There's your spells. There's the more generic spells, so crushing blow, courage, mystic shield, these sort of things, and then the specific ones for your races. So there's a whole load of dwarf ones here. Resolution, Stoneheart, all the sort of things you think with dwarves. Elves, you've got Pathfinder and True Light. Humans, Mud, Blade Mastery. Goblins and orcs have Fury and Horrify and those sort of things. So lots of variety, but also difference. Here's some of the special. So here you go. You could equip this unit here with Banner of Courage, which gives them basically an extra courage level. So there you go. There's the terrain effects, quick referencey type thing. There's your kingdom. So there's the example of, so your inner realm is where your home city is. There's one realm, there's another, there's the other realms that you build out. So you can map out your race, which will allow you to have certain troop types, as we discussed, which I think is fun. And there's some nice copyable sheets for your army roster. Now, I think these are actually really, really good books. Really good rule set. I'm really interested by them. I think they'll give an interesting game, hopefully. I think getting a bit sniffy about maximum, having 5-figure fronts and everything being in those 5-man blocks. But you know what? I think it might work that way. It'll keep things a lot simpler. Particularly if you're removing individual figures, units will wear down very quickly, and the depth and the strength of those phalanxes as they charge in is going to make a huge difference. So I think they're going to be fun to play. I'm looking forward to having a go. But let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you think. Have you bought them? Are you thinking about them? Or you just doesn't interest you at all? Stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you again soon. This is Dom, signing out.